Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are cracking open one of the most visible, yet I think least understood corporations on the entire planet.
We are talking about McDonald's.
We are. And it's such a classic case study, isn't it?
It really is. It's this global icon. You see the golden arches everywhere. But what's so fascinating is how the real foundation of its power is, well, it's hidden in plain sight.
Obscured by the Big Mac.
Exactly. The familiarity of it all.
That's right. Everyone knows the hamburger, but what we uncovered in the sources goes so much deeper than the fryer oil. We're looking at a story of, astonishing innovation, but also industrial mechanics and real sociological engineering.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive is to find those crucial nuggets of knowledge that are usually overlooked, specifically the surprising reality of their revenue streams and their huge cultural footprint.
We're moving beyond the counter. We're going to examine how this simple concept, born in 1940s California, became this massive financial and sociological force.
A force that has literally standardized huge parts of the world.
And often determines the global supply chains we all rely on.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the food, but maybe only so we can immediately pivot to where the real money is made.
Well, the initial genius was pure engineering. Dick and Mac McDonald, the actual founders, they weren't really chefs.
They were process engineers.
Totally. When they launched their concept in 1940, they came up with the speedy service system.
Which was the original automation system, right? The assembly line for food.
A culinary assembly line, designed for high volume, high efficiency.
So they figured out the how of fast food. But they completely missed the what of fast wealth. That had to wait.
It did. It had to wait until 1954 when Ray Kroc, who was a milkshake machine salesman, saw their system.
And he just instantly got it. He saw the potential for scaling it up. But his real genius, it wasn't about the food, was it?
Not at all. Not the food, not the machines. Kroc's true big idea, the thing the entire modern empire is built on, wasn't selling food to the consumer.
It was selling real estate to the franchisee.
That's it. He understood that if the company bought the land or secured the site for the restaurant and then leased it back to the person running it,
the company gets this continuous, steady income stream.
A very stable one. And it's completely separate from how many burgers they sell.
This is the core insight. This is the truth that just changes everything. McDonald's is fundamentally a real estate company.
Yes, with a burger division just sort of tacked on top.
That is the crucial takeaway. Today, most of McDonald's revenue comes from those rental contracts.
From land ownership, not from the food you're actually eating.
There's that great quote from the analyst Marjorie Kelly. She called it
a fast food-styled real estate machine.
That's it. Wait, so how does that actually work for the franchisee? Because it sounds like you're asking them to pay twice.
You are. That's precisely right. And that's the mechanism of Kroc's genius.
So they pay a royalty for the brand.
Yep. A percentage of sales. That goes to marketing, operational support, the usual. And then, critically, the rental fee for the site, which often includes a significant markup over what it actually costs McDonald's to own or lease it.
So that rental income is predictable.
It's inflation protected, and it provides this tremendous financial stability.
So just to be clear, McDonald's could survive a huge downturn in the burger market as long as they hold those leases.
Oh, absolutely. The real estate is a massive financial buffer. If people stopped eating Big Macs tomorrow, McDonald's Corporation would still be a gargantuan global landlord just collecting rent.
Wow. Consumers think they're funding a burger operation.
And they're really feeding a global property giant.
And that economic pressure, that need to protect the real estate side, connects directly to the part of the business that gets all the public scrutiny.
The food itself.
The industrial reality of the food itself. Here's where it gets really interesting.
And this brings us to part 2, because we have to separate decades of myth from what's actually going on. And the rumors are wild.
Oh, we've all heard them. The meat has solvents in it. It's mixed with worms.
Pink slime, plastic.
That it's 100% synthetic lab meat.
Right. And to address those urban legends, based on the sources, they are all scientifically refuted.
According to U.S. food inspection rules, the meat is genuine.
Yes. That 100% beef label means exactly that. It can't have animal protein substitutes. It can't have chemical fillers.
So if the controversy isn't about what the meat is, where does the real scrutiny land? I'm thinking of sources like Eric Schlosser's Fast Food Nation.
It shifts completely. It moves from the composition of the meat to the industrial production model that makes it all possible.
Say it with it.
The immense scale and the low cost. Because McDonald's demands uniformity and price stability everywhere in the world, they have to rely on these massive, consolidated industrial meat suppliers.
So the controversy isn't some secret ingredient.
No, it's the supply chain itself.
And what are the main points of debate there with that industrial scale?
You're looking at three major areas. First, the systematic use of antibiotics in farming, which is a huge concern for public health experts looking at antibiotic resistance.
Okay.
Second, the huge environmental impacts of these massive single-product farms, monocultures that need tons of water and create massive waste.
And third,
Animal welfare standards. Just the baseline standards inherent in producing protein at that volume and for that incredibly low price.
it's the cost of efficiency, but it's measured in more than just dollars.
Exactly. Environmental and societal metrics.
We should say, though, the company has responded to some of this pressure.
They have. Between 2018 and 2020, they started removing a lot of artificial additives from the U.S. menu.
And Europe already had stricter rules anyway.
Right. But that voluntary shift, while important, doesn't change the core argument you see in works like Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma.
Which is?
The issue isn't whether the food is legally beef. It's the profound implications of how that food gets to your tray. The immense pressure for low prices just drives the whole agricultural system toward this intense and often very problematic industrialization.
The system that supports a giant like McDonald's
Yeah.
is what needs the critical attention. So the economic pressure from the real estate machine translates into industrial pressure on the supply chain, which brings us perfectly to the societal footprint. Let's switch gears and talk about the culture this giant created.
This is where you get into that idea of transparent but invisible.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the corporate documents, the operating principles, they're all available, but the public so rarely stops to really internalize them, to understand the deeper social impact.
Let's start with labor. I mean, the term McJob,
Became a dictionary word.
in the 1980s, it became this universal symbol for low-wage, high-turnover, precarious work.
And that concept, McJob, it fueled the core work of the sociologist George Ritzer. He developed the theory of McDonaldization.
And this is maybe the most profound academic idea we're talking about today.
I think so. Ritzer argues that the operating structure of McDonald's is basically the blueprint for modern society.
So it's more than just fast food. How does it define society?
He says modern society is shaped by its four core principles: efficiency, so speed; calculability, which is standardization and quantifying everything;
Right.
predictability, the same experience everywhere; and control, often through technology or rigid procedures. Ritzer actually called it surveillance.
Can you give me a non-burger example of that?
Sure. Think about standardized testing in education. That is pure calculability and standardization.
Right.
Or a customer service script. A worker has to follow word for word, timed by an algorithm.
Right.
That's control and efficiency. Or even the self-checkout at the grocery store.
You're doing the labor yourself.
For maximal efficiency and low cost to the company, and the whole process is standardized for predictability. McDonaldization is just the rationalization of every part of our lives.
That really highlights the cultural standardization we just absorb every day. But maybe the most direct cultural touch point, and the most criticized, has been their marketing to children.
The Happy Meal.
The Happy Meal.
Absolutely. The Happy Meal has been a lightning rod. Sources from the 90s, cited by health groups, talked about this huge psychological dimension.
What, the kids were getting addicted to the toys?
Millions of children, reportedly, were driven by a form of toy addiction. This need to collect the limited edition toys created demand beyond the food. The toy became the product.
And the food was just the delivery mechanism.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you have the most famous countercultural moment, Morgan Spurlock's documentary from 2004.
Supersize Me.
It just threw the company's health implications onto the global stage.
It did. It used one man's body as the metric for the dangers of just continuous consumption. And while the corporation, they publicly rejected the film's methods.
They said it was unrepresentative.
Right. But there was this fascinating consequence. In the years that followed, the supersize menus, the exact ones Spurlock focused on, they were quietly removed.
The timing is very suggestive.
It strongly suggests that public pressure forced a change.
Which shows even a massive corporation can subtly shift. Now let's go even bigger than culture. Let's talk global politics.
McDonald's as an American culture export.
Or what political scientists call soft power.
This is where the academic debate gets really interesting. The political scientist Benjamin Barber argued that McDonald's, along with brands like Coke and Disney, became one of the most effective carriers of American soft power after the Cold War.
What exactly is soft power in this context?
It's a country's ability to influence others through attraction rather than coercion. So in this case, the standardized, brightly lit, efficient experience of a McDonald's in a foreign country, it conveys specific cultural values.
Efficiency, consumer choice.
Consumerism, the American lifestyle. Instead of an expensive military base, you open a cheaper, palatable brand.
The hamburger becomes a symbol.
Precisely, which led some to call it a form of cultural imperialism, a standardization imposed through consumerism.
But then you have a completely contrasting theory.
Oh.
From Thomas Friedman.
Yes, his famous or infamous Golden Arches theory of conflict prevention.
It sounds so simplified. What was his rationale?
The rationale was economic interdependence. Friedman basically theorized that once a country's middle class is developed enough to support a global chain like McDonald's, the population and the government have too much to lose to risk it all on a war.
So economic standardization just raises the cost of conflict too high.
That was the theory.
From real estate tycoon to global peace broker, I mean, the sheer breadth of this is immense. But before we get to the so what, let's hit some of those hidden nuggets.
The fun stuff. The little facts that show how deep the optimization really goes.
Did you know, for example, that McDonald's is the world's largest private company consumer of potatoes?
It's not just a restaurant chain, it's a major driver of global potato farming.
Exactly. And another one on the food science. The Chicken McNugget formula from the 70s.
Not an accident.
Not at all. It was engineered to hit a specific fat and salt ratio to encourage what they call continuous craving.
So it's good enough to make you want the next one, but not so satisfying that you actually stop eating?
It's a delicious cliffhanger for your appetite. I love that. And here's one for the mechanics out there. The square spoon for the McFlurry.
It's not just a spoon.
It's not. That square end is the functional mixer spindle. The machine clicks into it and blends the ice cream.
It's brilliant resource efficiency. Instead of a tool that has to be washed, the customer gets the blending tool with their dessert.
And finally, because of the Happy Meal, the company is one of the world's largest toy distributors.
Which is just a crazy statistic when you think about it.
So let's bring this all back. The final scientific consensus on health. What does this all mean for the person at the drive-thru?
The sources are pretty clear. The food itself isn't illegal. It's not some mysterious lab concoction.
Right. A single occasional indulgence isn't the problem.
No, the consensus is that the real danger comes from the culture of continuous consumption that this whole system encourages.
The food is engineered. Highly calculated sugar, fat, and salt for quick gratification.
And when that kind of high-calorie, low-fiber diet becomes a habit, a continuous part of your routine, it contributes directly to the modern health problems we all know about.
So the takeaway isn't to demonize a burger. The conclusion is that the danger is more from their habit, from the pervasive culture of convenience, than from the specific ingredients themselves.
It's a powerful thing to realize, to see how a corporate giant can operate in a way that is, as we said, transparent but invisible, hiding its real model behind those familiar golden arches.
So we've covered McDonald's as a real estate giant, a societal standardizer, and a complex soft power tool. It is genuinely a lot for process.
It is. So let's leave you with a final thought, building on Ritzer's concept of McDonaldization.
Okay.
If the principles of speed, standardization, and low cost govern how we eat, where else in your life can you spot that influence?
In your work, in your education.
Even your entertainment streaming habits. Where has life been streamlined for corporate efficiency? And maybe more importantly, what have you lost in the process?
The moment you start looking, you'll see a little golden arch influence everywhere. For those who want to dive even deeper, the essential reading on this is vast.
From the McDonaldization of society in Fast Food Nation to the analysis in No Logo and the history in the film The Founder.
Dive deep, and we'll see you next time.